our local election officials and all of those election judges, Republican and Democrat, always there together. That system of sort of respectful partisanship is really the key to bringing the integrity to the process that gave us that great recount.
Democratic Visions is produced by volunteers for DFL Senate District 42.
Mark Ritchie is a state office holder who literally needs no introduction. Mark is the outstanding Secretary of State for the state of Minnesota. He became a household name around the country during the Franken-Coleman recount process. Republicans and Democrats alike acknowledged that the Minnesota credo of clean and open elections was followed and protected. He was named the most valuable state official in the United States by The Nation magazine, and he was named Politician of the Year by Politics in Minnesota, the state's largest political journal. Mr. Secretary of State, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's great to be back on your show.
So here's the deal. You're in charge of elections. I know you have other duties, but everybody's focused on the election. Your election, of course, you're running for re-election, are you not?
Yes, that's correct.
But tell me, what's been done since you've become Secretary of State to facilitate the clean and open elections that Minnesota enjoys?
Well, the most important thing is that Minnesota's system is really based on the elections being run at the local level.
State and county? I mean,
townships,
county, excuse me.
City, towns, county. I have the title, State's Chief Election Officer, but in a way that's a misnomer because the elections are run at the local level. But my job is to be an excellent partner. There are many things that we provide to the local communities. There are also laws passed by Congress where we are the bridge from the local to the federal. But since I was elected, there are things that we've done in partnership with our local election officials and local communities that I think have been very transformative. Let me just give you a couple examples. For many years, the Pentagon, the Department of Defense, has been writing to the Minnesota Secretary of State, the governor, the legislature, and saying, hey, your soldiers and others serving in the military and others who are overseas have a really tough time voting in Minnesota. Biggest problem is how late our primary normally is. September, after the primary, ballots couldn't get out and get back, basically disenfranchising those voters.
The problem was getting the ballots out overseas to the military personnel, having them cast the ballots and send them back in time to be counted?
Exactly. And for 10 years, basically, people ignored it. But I've been very active, especially in my Association for the U.S. Army chapter, and we've been talking about this issue and working on this issue. And I said when I got elected, we're going to do something about this problem. So first thing, when I walked in, actually there was a letter from the Pentagon with 10 suggestions. We took those suggestions, we crafted a piece of legislation to make real significant improvements, put it in the hopper, passed it significantly with very good support. Unfortunately, it got vetoed, but we came back the next year, passed it, and it's been transformative. Here's an example. 2006, we had about 1,000 Minnesota soldiers and others serving in the military able to vote. By 2008, we had tripled that to over 3,000. We also simplified the process, but still, we were having difficulty with the timing. We were able in 2009 to pass through the legislature to change the date of the primary to make sure there was enough time. Again, that got vetoed, but in 2010, that law got passed, got signed, and we've implemented it. So it's been transformative for our soldiers, others serving in the military, but also our businesses, our students, missionaries, people who are overseas in development work and different kinds of projects around the planet. But we saw things in the recount that also gave us ideas. For example, who would have known that almost 10% of Minnesotans are voting by absentee ballot now?
I was going to ask you what the universe was.
Yes, it's almost 300,000. Now this is a system developed during the Civil War, so our soldiers had a way to vote. Kind of built to be small, compact. In 2006 and 2008, we began to see a real ratcheting up of absentee voting, and it has really put a stress on the system. We passed it, it was vetoed, but we passed it again in 2010 to actually make the process of absentee voting much simpler, but also much more efficient. The envelope, the instructions, all those things have been transformed to be much easier. At the city level, many people have been experienced as election judges before. They knew that we used to process all these absentee ballots in the polling place. That will no longer happen. We were the last state in the nation to make the change so that that processing will take place either at the city or generally at the county level. So the recount was this incredible opportunity to look deeply into our system, to test it in lots of different ways, and of course there were millions of dollars available to both candidates to look for any problems, and it gave us tremendous information about how Minnesotans want to vote now and directions that we need to head into the future.
Can we still change our mind if we vote absentee and then go into the polling place on election day? Can we vote on election day, or if we've cast a vote absentee, are we precluded from doing that?
We will close the absentee voting process for the purposes of creating our poll list on Friday night before the election. Absentee ballots will continue to arrive, of course, because the mail comes on Saturday, on Monday, on Tuesday. And the county or the city, depending on where you live, will be in touch with your polling place so that if in fact you decided that you had cast your ballot on an absentee basis and you wanted to change your mind.
Or something, Paul Wellstone, I mean, well, we had to do that.
You have two different situations now. If you change your mind, you could go in before Friday night and easily replace your absentee ballot. You could also go, there are some scenarios where you could make that change. But the specific instance that you were mentioning where Senator Wellstone was killed, and a decade before when Governor candidate John Grunseth was removed from the ballot in the middle of kind of a scandal. Under the old system in Minnesota, we were allowed to kind of create a small little supplemental ballot. People who voted in either of those elections, remember we had a little sheet of paper, it was alongside the normal ballot and we would mark those. Federal law today requires all elections that are federal, so let's say a Senate race like Senator Wellstone, must have 45 days minimum before the date of election for absentee ballots to go out to our soldiers and others serving in the military. So what we did when Senator Wellstone was killed, we would no longer do. We would simply have a special election, another election, 45 or more days after. So we still would have the opportunity for people to vote, and there's still opportunity if you change your mind near the end, but it's a little less flexible than before to make sure that we have a more efficient system.
When you go out and campaign, do you find that the voters of Minnesota appreciate the fact that the recount between Senator Coleman and Senator Franken was done on a fair and transparent basis?
Absolutely. People stop me on the street anywhere I go in the state. They thank me for making Minnesota proud. They thank me for the really excellent job that was done. They also sometimes confide in me that they didn't necessarily support the winner, but they were really concerned that Minnesota was the winner, and that's how they feel. Public opinion polling bears this out. Last poll that was really done on this, about 2/3 of Minnesotans were really proud of the recount, thought it was fair to both sides. About 15% felt it wasn't fair to Senator Franken, he should have been seated right away. About 15% think it wasn't fair to Senator Coleman, he should have won. So that a typical split, you know, we're a state with different kind of forces, but I think overall people have felt really proud. And sometimes they say to me, oh, I'm so glad we're not Florida. But what's more important than not being Florida is that we are Minnesota, and we were able to do that recount because we had excellent systems for voting. We vote on paper, we have excellent systems, and our local election officials and all of those election judges, Republican and Democrat, always there together. That system of sort of respectful partisanship is really the key to bringing the integrity to the process that gave us that great recount.
Well, Mark, major kudos to you from Democratic Visions. I'm sure you're going to be re-elected, and it's always a pleasure seeing you.
Thank you so much. See you again, I hope.
Thank you.
Democratic Visions is produced by volunteers for DFL Senate District 42. Norbert Gurnes, Chair.